Hey there, welcome to Legends of All Time. Today, you'll meet a king who lived only 32 years, but shook the ancient world so hard that maps, cultures, and myths had to change to keep up with him. His name is Alexander the Great, King of Macedonia, and he built one of the largest empires of antiquity with speed that still feels unreal. Imagine a teenage prince watching his father, King Philip II, turn rough, underestimated Macedonia into a serious military powerhouse. The boy grows up surrounded by war councils, training grounds, and political plots. His tutor is not just some local teacher, but the philosopher Aristotle. So from early years, Alexander learns both how to ride a war horse and how to ask big questions about the world, heroes, and glory. There's a famous story that shows his character. A wild horse named Bucephalus is brought before the king. No one can ride it. The animal throws off every rider, snorts, fights, becomes more and more furious. Everyone laughs and says it's useless. Young Alexander watches carefully and notices something simple. The horse is terrified of its own shadow. He turns the animal toward the sun, calms it, mounts, and rides. The message is clear. Where others see a problem, he looks closer and finds a solution. When his father is assassinated, Alexander becomes king at just 20. Many expect him to lose control. Greek cities are restless and ready to rebel. Enemies outside Macedonia think this is their chance. Alexander moves faster than rumors. He crushes revolts, forces Greek cities back into line, and shows that the change of king does not mean weakness. Once his home front is secure, his eyes turn to a much bigger target, the Persian Empire, the giant superpower of the region. Persia is enormous, rich, and confident. On paper, Alexander looks like a reckless young challenger. In reality, he is one of the most gifted commanders in history. His army is small compared to Persia's, but highly trained and fiercely loyal. He blends tight Macedonian phalanxes with fast cavalry strikes. At the Granicus River, he leads his men straight through the water into enemy forces. At Issus, he crushes a much larger army led by the Persian king Darius himself. At Gaugamela, on a wide open plain, he faces the full strength of Persia and breaks it with bold, perfectly timed attacks. Alexander does not command from the rear. He rides at the front, spear in hand, close enough to be killed in every battle. His soldiers see their king share their danger. That fires them up more than any speech. For them, he is not just a ruler, he is the ultimate warrior of their own army. Wounds on his body become living proof of his courage. But he is not only a destroyer. Everywhere he goes, he leaves new foundations behind. He creates cities, often naming them Alexandria. The most famous one, in Egypt, will later become a center of science, trade, and culture. Through these cities, Greek language and ideas spread across the East, while local customs, beliefs, and knowledge move toward the West. His empire becomes not just a chain of conquered lands, but a network of cultural crossroads. Alexander also knows the power of image. In Egypt, he is welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule and crowned as pharaoh. He travels to the oracle at Siwa in the desert, where priests treat him as someone touched by the divine. Stories begin to circulate that he is the son of a god. Some see this as religious truth, others as smart propaganda. Either way, the myth of Alexander grows. He is no longer just a king, he is a legend walking. At the same time, he begins to blur the lines between Macedonian and Persian ways of life. He adopts some elements of Persian dress, encourages his officers to marry local noblewomen, and tries to train a new army that mixes Macedonians and Persians together. His idea is to build one blended ruling class for a blended empire. Many of his original soldiers hate this. They want to stay separate, proud, and special. They like the glory and the loot, but not the mixing. The campaign keeps pushing east. Across high mountains, burning deserts, and unknown rivers, Alexander drives his army forward. He reaches lands that Greeks once only heard about in myths. In India, he faces new kinds of warriors and strange, terrifying war elephants. At the Hydaspes River, he fights King Porus in a brutal battle, where the ground turns to mud and chaos and elephants crash through lines of men. Alexander wins again, but this time the cost is heavy and the danger very real. After years on the march, his army finally reaches its limit. Exhausted, homesick, and scarred, his soldiers refuse to go any farther into the unknown. They stand on the banks of distant rivers and say no to their unstoppable king. Alexander pleads, plans, and threatens, but this time his will meets a wall. He's forced to turn back. It's one of the rare moments where he cannot bend reality to his ambition. The return journey is no victory parade. At one point, he chooses to lead his army through the harsh desert of Gedrosia. Heat, thirst, and endless sand grind down the troops. Many die on the way. Alexander shares the suffering. When soldiers bring him a helmet full of precious water, he pours it out on the ground rather than drink alone. The gesture doesn't save lives, but it keeps their loyalty burning a little longer. Back in the city of Babylon, Alexander begins to plan again. New campaigns, new roads, new ways to organize his vast empire. He wants to weave together the lands he has conquered into something stable and lasting. But his body finally fails him before his plans can take shape. At only 32 years old, he falls ill after a banquet and dies some days later. The exact cause remains a mystery in history: fever, infection, or something else. What is clear is that his energy burned out shockingly fast. His death leaves a giant question mark behind. There is no strong adult heir ready to take over. His famous generals, the Diadochi, start fighting each other for pieces of the empire. The united map he created shatters into several kingdoms. Yet, even as his political empire breaks apart, the cultural world he set in motion continues. Greek becomes the main language of trade and high culture across huge regions. Cities with Greek theaters, temples, and marketplaces stand side by side with local shrines and traditions. Scientists, philosophers, traders, and artists move more freely between lands that used to be separate worlds. This era, later called the Hellenistic period, grows out of the shockwave of his conquests. Why does Alexander the Great still fascinate people today? Because he is the extreme version of human drive. He is ambition turned up to the maximum. He refuses to accept limits that others see as normal. He is both brilliant and dangerous. He can be generous and respectful toward defeated kings, yet merciless toward cities that resist him. He is a military genius, a political actor, and a restless dreamer, all in one person. When you look at a map of his campaigns, you don't just see lines and arrows. You see a path of someone who kept asking, what's beyond that mountain? What's beyond that river? How far can I go before the world ends? His empire did not survive as a single unit, but its effects shaped history for centuries. Without him, the link between Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and many Eastern cultures would look very different. So when you hear the name Alexander the Great, don't picture only a statue with a sword. Imagine dust clouds rising from thousands of marching feet. Imagine the shouting in many languages in his camps at night. Imagine a young king charging ahead of his troops into battle, convinced that destiny is riding on the horse beneath him. He lived fast, conquered hard, and left the world unable to forget him. If this story about Alexander the Great and his wild, world-shaping journey amazed you, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Legends of All Time, and check out other videos on our channel. There are many more great lives and epic stories waiting for you there.